The air inside the alien auction hall was heavy and hot, filled with the smell of smoke and fear. Dozens of humans stood in a metal cage, their wrists locked together with bright blue chains. The aliens, tall and sharp-eyed, whispered to each other, their voices buzzing like insects. They laughed as they pointed at the humans, calling them primitive animals. Every word felt like a knife. But none of the captives dared to speak. Among them stood Captain Riley, her head slightly bowed, her face dirty and tired. To the aliens, she looked like a broken woman, just another slave waiting to be sold. But behind her dull eyes, her mind was calm, sharp and focused. Every second she studied the guards, the exits, and the strange glowing devices on the walls. She knew exactly how many guards were armed and which one carried the master key. The auction master, a gray-skinned alien with 4 arms, stepped forward. He shouted, "Next lot, the human soldiers." The crowd leaned in eagerly, their eyes glowing yellow under the bright lights. Riley kept her breathing slow, pretending to stumble as she walked to the center stage. The floor was cold beneath her bare feet, and the sound of chains echoed like thunder. The alien announcer lifted Riley's chin with a metal rod, studying her face. "Strong build," he said in his rough voice, "but quiet, maybe a worker." He laughed, and the crowd joined him. Riley's lips moved slightly, almost a whisper, but no one heard the words, because the tiny movement of her tongue pressed against a hidden switch inside her mouthpiece. A short pulse of light blinked beneath her jaw, invisible to alien eyes far above the auction planet. A cloaked human ship caught the signal inside it. Lieutenant Vega saw the green light on the console flash once. "She's alive," he said, his voice trembling with relief. The rescue mission had officially begun. Back on the auction floor, Riley was pushed to her knees. The aliens argued about the price, shouting numbers in their strange language. One alien reached out to touch her hair, and she didn't move. Another laughed, saying, "Humans, you're soft and weak." But inside, Riley's heart beat with quiet fire. Every insult made her stronger. Every laugh made her colder. In the crowd, small human children clung to each other, terrified. One girl whispered to another, "Will they take us away?" Riley heard her and turned her head slightly, just enough to make eye contact. Her eyes told the girl something simple. Not for long. The girl didn't understand the words, but she felt the promise in that look. Suddenly, a loudspeaker cracked, announcing a new shipment arriving from another planet. The aliens turned their attention to the gates, distracted by the promise of more profit. Riley used the moment to move her thumb, pressing hard against the metal cuff. A soft vibration answered. The comm signal was confirmed. Her hidden team underground had received it. From that moment, everything was in motion. The hall grew louder as more aliens entered. Guards walked past with electric spears, and traders counted glowing credits. Riley stayed perfectly still, knowing any sudden move could ruin everything. One guard kicked her shoulder, forcing her to look down again. "Stay quiet, human," he growled, but she didn't react, because she wasn't planning to stay quiet much longer. Above the chaos, one alien shouted to sell the next one. The crowd screamed with excitement, throwing their offers. Riley looked around and memorized every camera, every guard's position. Then she lowered her head again, hiding a faint smile. No one noticed the small metallic bracelet around her wrist flickering with red light. That tiny device was counting down seconds. 30, 29, 28. Her breathing steadied. Her pulse aligned with the timer. Outside the hall under the alien city, Vega's voice whispered through static. "Ready on your signal, Captain." Riley didn't speak, but she lifted her eyes toward the glowing ceiling. She whispered only one word to herself. "Soon?" The crowd laughed again, completely unaware that the slave before them was a soldier. Not a victim, but a weapon disguised as prey. The aliens believed they were watching a sale, but in truth, they were standing in the center of a ticking trap, and at the heart of that trap stood a woman who smiled in silence. Because she knew, tonight the hunters would become the hunted. Deep beneath the alien city in a forgotten maintenance tunnel, a faint beep echoed through the darkness. The sound came from a small metal box resting on a dusty crate, its green light blinking steady. Lieutenant Vega crouched beside it, holding his breath. The signal had come. Captain Riley was alive, and the mission was on. Around him, 4 human soldiers checked their weapons in silence. Their faces were streaked with sweat and dirt, their eyes glowing faintly in the light of their headlamps. The walls of the tunnel were covered with strange alien roots and glowing mold. The air smelled like rust and ozone. Vega spoke softly into his headset. All teams confirm status. One by one, quiet voices answered. Ready, ready, ready. Then the last one came, shaky but firm. Ready, sir. It was Private Asha, the youngest in the team. Barely 20, she looked terrified. But her hands didn't tremble. Vega nodded. Good. Remember that no one fires until Riley gives the signal. Above them, in the auction hall, Captain Riley stood motionless in her chains. She felt the vibration through her wrist. Confirmation received. She didn't move her face, but her heart steadied. The timing had to be perfect. One mistake and hundreds of lives would be lost. Back underground, Vega unrolled a holographic map. Blue lines formed the shape of the city, with red dots showing the alien patrols. He pointed toward a glowing square near the top. That's the auction house, then to the tunnels. We'll move under Sector 9, breach the power core, and cut all lights when she gives the mark. The others nodded, tension building in their silence. Every one of them knew this wasn't just a rescue. It was payback. For months, the aliens had been capturing humans from broken colonies, selling them across the galaxy like cattle. No government, no fleet, no law had stopped them. But tonight, a small human team would make the universe remember what humans were capable of. Vega turned to Asha. Activate the signal jammer. We don't want them calling for backup. Asha pulled out a thin silver disc and pressed it against the tunnel wall. It glowed blue, then vanished as if it melted into the metal. Within seconds, alien radio chatter across the city began to distort and fade. Back in the hall, one alien trader frowned, tapping his communicator. Strange interference, he muttered. Riley listened carefully, her heart racing faster now. Everything was aligning exactly how they planned it. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from the loading bay. A heavy crash. The aliens turned their heads toward the sound, confused. Riley used the distraction to kneel beside another captive. A small boy with chains around his wrists stared at her, shaking. Miss, are we going to die? He whispered. Riley's voice was calm and soft. No, kid, we're going home. The boy's eyes widened, but before he could speak, a guard shouted, Back in line. Riley stood, her expression empty again. But inside she was smiling beneath the hall. Vega's team crawled deeper through the maintenance ducts. The sound of alien boots echoed above them like thunder. Every vibration told them how close they were. 30 meters to breach point, whispered Asha. Vega nodded. Plant the charges. 2 soldiers set down small metal pods along the tunnel walls, each blinked red. Ready? Once she drops the lights, we go up, Vega said. His voice low but full of fire far above. Riley heard a faint hum through her bracelet. The countdown had begun. She tilted her head slightly, watching the guards walk by. Her lips moved silently, counting under her breath 10, 9, 8. A guard passed close, suspicious, his weapon ready. For a second their eyes met, and she thought he had noticed. But he just grunted and turned away. 3, 2, 1. Riley pressed her thumb against the hidden switch again. The red light under her cuff blinked 3 times. Deep underground, Vega saw the signal. He raised his fist, then whispered, Now! The tunnel exploded into light as the team moved out. Dirt and smoke filled the air, echoing through the alien city's core. Sirens began to wail above them, alarms screaming through the market district. Riley's chains clicked open with a soft metallic sound. The auction master spun around, shouting, Oh, what's happening? But by the time he looked back, the human woman was gone. The hall trembled as explosions rumbled from beneath. And for the first time, the aliens realized something terrifying. Their slaves were fighting back, and they weren't alone anymore. Riley stepped from the shadows, a calm smile on her face. Her voice was low and dangerous. Round one's over, far below. Vega looked at the rising dust above them and whispered, Show them what a rescue mission looks like, Captain. The sky above the alien city turned red as alarm lights flashed across the skyline. Sirens screamed through every street, echoing like angry ghosts inside the auction hall. Chaos spread like wildfire. The floor shook, smoke rising from cracks in the metal walls. Aliens shouted orders in their harsh language, running toward exits. None of them noticed the human woman standing quietly in the corner. Her chains broken, Captain Riley took a deep breath, feeling the heat of the explosions beneath her feet. Every vibration meant her team was getting closer. She looked around, guards running, civilians panicking, buyers hiding behind metal crates. For a moment, she almost pitied them. Then she remembered the cages, the screams and the children being sold. Her pity burned away like smoke, replaced by purpose. 2 guards appeared, their weapons glowing blue. Riley stayed still, pretending to be frightened. Her eyes lowered as they reached her. One guard grabbed her arm roughly. "Stay down, human," he hissed. The other turned his back to check the corridor. That was his mistake. Riley moved fast, faster than any human they had ever seen. Her knee hit the first guard's chest. Breaking his breath, she twisted, caught the second's arm, and slammed his head into the wall. Both hit the ground before they even understood what happened. She took their weapons, her movements quiet and clean. Outside the hall, Vega's team crawled through a narrow service tunnel. Their suits were covered in dust, their faces tense. "Power junction ahead," whispered Asha. Pointing to a glowing box on the wall, Vega nodded. "Cut it!" She reached for her toolkit, pulled a wire, and the light died instantly above them. The entire market plunged into darkness. Riley looked up as the lights flickered out. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "It's time," she whispered. For a few seconds, silence ruled the hall. Then came confusion. Aliens shouting, running into each other. Some fired blindly into the shadows, hitting walls and ceilings. Riley moved like a ghost between them. Unseen, unheard. Her stolen weapon hummed softly in her hand. She aimed at the control station near the cage doors and fired once. The shot tore through the panel, and every lock in the hall clicked open. Dozens of humans looked up in shock as the doors swung wide. For a moment, none of them moved. Fear still chained their minds. Then Riley shouted, her voice clear and sharp. "Run! Get to the south gate." Her words carried through the hall like thunder. One man stepped out first, then another. Then the flood began. The slaves ran for freedom, their fear replaced by desperate courage down below. Vega watched the map on his wrist device. Red dots moved fast toward the exits. He smiled. "That's her signal." "All right. Prepare extraction zone," he ordered. The soldiers set up portable shields and flares in the underground bay. Each heartbeat brought the sound of distant explosions closer. Asha whispered. "She's ahead of schedule," Vega answered. "That's Riley. She doesn't wait for anyone." Back in the hall, an alien commander barked orders. "Seal the exits. Stop them." He raised his plasma rifle and fired into the crowd. Riley dove between fallen crates, rolling to cover. She spotted the commander across the room. Big, armored, confident, she aimed, fired, and hit his shoulder. The shot sent him spinning backward, roaring in pain. The humans saw it happen. A soldier standing against their captors. Their fear broke completely, replaced by something older. Rage. Men and women grabbed whatever they could, metal rods, tools, broken chains. They attacked the guards with wild energy. The hall became a storm of fire and shouts. Riley moved through the smoke, clearing a path toward the loading bay. Her weapon overheated, so she dropped it and picked up another from a fallen alien. Every move was precise, efficient, ruthless. Yet behind every strike there was mercy. She aimed to disable, not torture, because this wasn't revenge. It was liberation. From her earpiece came Vega's voice through static. "Captain, we're in position, extraction ready." Riley ducked behind a burning console. Breathing hard. "Copy that," she said quietly. "Prepare for company." She turned to the nearest freed human, a boy with wide eyes. "Lead the others south, gonna stay low." He nodded, and they ran into the smoky corridor. Riley stood for a moment, staring at the chaos she had unleashed. The aliens had spent years calling humans weak. Tonight they would learn how wrong they were. Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder. The human dropship was coming, cutting through clouds of smoke and flame. Riley watched through the shattered ceiling as it descended. Her heart raced, but her voice stayed calm. "Let's finish this," she whispered. And as she stepped through the burning door toward the open street, the calm before the storm was over. The real battle was about to begin. The streets outside the auction hall burned with orange light, smoke curling into the alien night sky. Sparks rained from shattered signs, and the ground shook under the roar of explosions. Every siren in the city wailed at once, warning of human rebellion inside the ruined hall. Captain Riley pushed forward through the haze, her boots crunching over glass and metal. Her pulse matched the rhythm of chaos, steady, unstoppable. Around her, freed humans stumbled in shock, blinking through the smoke. Some still held their broken chains. Not believing they were free, Riley shouted, "Move to the south exit now." Her voice cut through panic like a blade. People obeyed. running toward the burning doors while blaster fire flashed above their heads. A group of aliens tried to block the path. Shouting in their own language, Riley dove behind a steel crate, returning fire with sharp bursts. Her shots were clean, controlled, each one finding a mark. The aliens fell one by one, confusion twisting their faces. They had never seen humans fight like this. A young man beside her picked up a fallen weapon, his hand shaking. "Can I shoot?" he asked. Riley nodded. "Aim for the armor gaps. Breathe. Then fire." He squeezed the trigger, hitting his target, and for the first time, he smiled. Above them, the ceiling groaned as flames spread. The once glorious auction hall was collapsing. The aliens had built this place to sell human lives. Now it was becoming their tomb in the underground tunnels. Vega's voice came through static. "Captain, we're reading heavy resistance near the west corridor." Riley ducked behind a pillar, catching her breath. "Copy that," she said. "We're pushing east. Get the evac ready." She looked back at the frightened crowd. "Keep moving. Don't stop." An alien commander stormed into the hall with armored guards. He roared orders, his voice echoing through the ruins. "Capture them alive. The leader is worth more." Riley heard it and smiled coldly. She picked up a plasma grenade from the floor and tossed it across the room. It landed near the commander's feet. He had just enough time to look down before the blast sent him flying backward. The shockwave shattered windows, showering the hall with debris. Freed humans cheered for a brief second before gunfire silenced them again. Riley turned to see a mother shielding her child behind a crate. She sprinted toward them, firing at the approaching guards. Her shots tore through the alien's armor, sending sparks into the dark. She reached the mother and lifted the child into her arms. "Stay close to me," she said gently. Together they ran through smoke and flame toward the broken doors. Outside, the night air was colder, carrying the sound of distant engines. The human dropship hovered above the city, its lights cutting through the fog. Vega stood at the open ramp, waving flares to guide them. "Move! Move!" he shouted into the comms. Riley pushed the crowd forward, helping the wounded climb onto the ramp. The child in her arms cried softly, clinging to her jacket. "You're safe now," Riley whispered, though her eyes stayed sharp, scanning the rooftops. Suddenly a laser bolt streaked past her ear. She spun, spotting alien snipers on the high walls. "Cover fire!" she yelled, dropping behind a wrecked transport. The newly freed humans returned fire clumsily but bravely. Blaster flashes painted the dark in red and white. Vega's team above fired back with mounted cannons, tearing the walls apart. The noise was deafening, metal screaming under the heat. When the last sniper fell, silence rolled in like a wave. Smoke drifted through the square. Glowing in the light of distant flames, Riley looked around. Bodies, dust and freedom. She touched her earpiece. "Vega, how many aboard?" 76 and counting, he replied. "We can't stay much longer," Riley nodded. "Copy that." "I'm on my way." As she turned to climb the ramp, a massive alien trooper burst from the shadows. Twice her size, armored head to toe, roaring with fury. He charged at her with a plasma blade. Riley ducked, rolled, and fired point blank into his chest plate. The bolt bounced off, leaving a glowing scar. He swung again, cutting through metal and air. Riley dodged left, grabbed a fallen pipe, and slammed it into his helmet. The crack echoed and he stumbled. She fired once more under the armor seam. This time, the bolt found its way. The giant fell to his knees, then to the ground with a heavy thud. The crowd cheered as she stepped onto the ramp. Vega pulled her inside. Slapping the control panel, the ramp lifted. Sealing them in, engines roared, lifting the ship higher through smoke and fire. Riley stood near the hatch, watching the city shrink below. Her heart was heavy but proud. For years, humans had been treated like cattle. Tonight they had risen. Together and fought back. Vega approached, panting. "That was close," Riley smiled faintly. "That was necessary." Outside the viewport, alien ships began to chase them, their blue trail streaking across the sky. Riley tightened her grip on her rifle and said quietly, "Let them come. We're not done yet." The dropship tore through the night sky, flames licking its hull as it climbed above the burning city. Below, explosions painted the clouds orange, and the once proud alien marketplace turned into a graveyard of smoke. Captain Riley stood at the side viewport watching the chaos fade into distance. Her jaw tightened. This was only half the mission. They had freed the slaves, but they still had to make it out alive. Inside the ship, chaos continued in a different form. Freed humans sat huddled on the floor, coughing, crying, holding each other close. Medics moved between them, bandaging burns and checking vitals. Lieutenant Vega leaned against a console, sweat rolling down his face. Engine temperature rising, he muttered. The pilot's voice came through static. "We've got 3 enemy ships on pursuit, fast ones." Riley turned toward the cockpit, her eyes narrowing. "Can we outrun them?" The pilot shook his head. "Not for long outside." Through the ship's rear cameras, blue lights flickered in the clouds. Alien interceptors sliced through the smoke like glowing knives, their weapons charged, releasing streaks of plasma that cut across the dark sky. The first shot grazed the human ship's wing, shaking the hull violently. Screams echoed from the cargo bay as sparks fell from the ceiling. Riley grabbed the railing, shouting, "Everyone stay low!" Vega ran to the gunner's console. "Flipping the safety locks, turrets online," he said. Pulling down the targeting screen, through the sensors, he saw the alien ships closing in. 3 sleek hunters. He locked on to the nearest one and fired. The ship's cannons blazed, sending bright orange bolts into the night. 1 hit, 1 miss, the second hit dead center. The alien craft spun out of control, exploding in a brilliant flash. The blast lit up the clouds like fire under water. But the victory didn't last. 2 more enemy ships emerged from the smoke, faster and heavier. They fired together, plasma bolts slamming into the dropship's rear engines. The deck tilted sharply, sending people sliding across the floor. "Stabilizers offline," the pilot shouted. Riley grabbed the pilot's chair to steady herself. "Can we make it to orbit?" "Not unless we lose the tail," the pilot replied through gritted teeth. Riley looked toward Vega. "Suggestions?" He smirked. "We do it the human way, hit harder." She nodded. Walking toward the rear gun hatch, Vega grabbed her arm. "Captain, that's suicide. The shields are down." Riley looked at the terrified faces around her. The rescued humans, the wounded, the children. "Then it's a good day for suicide," she said calmly. Pulling the lever to open the hatch, cold wind and smoke blasted in as the metal door slid open. The city below was a sea of fire, glowing red and gold beneath the black clouds. Riley strapped herself into the manual gun harness. Her hair whipping in the wind, the stars above looked close enough to touch. She aimed at the blue lights chasing them, her finger steady on the trigger. When the alien ships fired again, she didn't flinch. She fired back. Bolts of orange plasma ripped through the sky. One struck a pursuing ship's wing, tearing it apart. It exploded behind them, lighting the clouds with another fiery bloom. The last alien ship dove straight toward them, guns blazing. The air shimmered with heat and metal as their shots crossed. Riley's harness jolted under the impact, sparks flying around her. "Captain, get back inside!" Vega shouted from the comm, but she ignored him. Adjusting her aim one last time, she fired a single focused burst right into the enemy's cockpit. The alien ship went silent for a split second, then erupted in a wave of fire and debris. The blast rocked the dropship. Spinning it sideways, Riley held onto the railing. Smoke filling her lungs, she coughed but smiled. It was done. Behind her, the sky burned bright with wreckage. The human dropship rose higher, breaking through the last layer of clouds. For a moment, everything was quiet, just stars and silence. Vega appeared beside her, pulling her back inside. "Next time, try not to fight a war alone," he said, shaking his head. Riley smiled faintly. "I wasn't alone, they were watching." She nodded toward the freed humans in the cargo bay. Children sleeping, mothers whispering prayers. Men staring at the stars they thought they'd never see again. Every one of them was part of something bigger now. The beginning of resistance. The pilot's voice came through again, calmer this time. Breaking atmosphere in 60 seconds, Riley exhaled, watching the blue curve of the planet below them fade. The flames disappeared as they rose into the quiet of space. Behind them, the alien city still burned, a message carved in fire. Humans were not property, not slaves, not forgotten. They were free, and they were coming back stronger. Vega looked out the viewport and whispered, "The sky burns tonight, Captain." Riley nodded, her eyes still fixed on the fading planet. "Good," she said softly. "Let them remember it." The human dropship broke through the atmosphere, leaving behind the burning planet. Stars filled the black sky, cold and distant, yet alive with silent promise inside the ship. Captain Riley leaned against the bulkhead, her uniform torn and her arm wrapped in a rough bandage. The crew worked in silence, each one exhausted but alert. Every vibration of the engine reminded them they were not safe yet. Lieutenant Vega stood beside the pilot, scanning the radar. 3 red dots blinked at the edge of the screen. Closing fast. More incoming, he said grimly. Riley walked forward, her steps steady even as the floor shook. Range? She asked. 30 seconds to contact, Vega replied. Heavily armed, Riley looked around the ship. A dozen freed humans, a few soldiers, and no reinforcements. This wasn't a battle anymore, it was survival. Power to the rear shields, she ordered. The pilot hesitated. They're still weak. We took too much damage. Do it anyway, she said sharply. We hold until the carrier arrives? Vega frowned. Captain, there is no carrier, we're on our own. Riley's face didn't change, but her eyes hardened. Then we make our own stand outside. The alien warships appeared, sleek, sharp and glowing with blue fire, their weapons charged, casting flashes of light across the darkness. The first volley hit, shaking the human dropship so hard that tools fell from the ceiling. People screamed, clutching each other as sparks rained down. Riley grabbed the railing, shouting over the noise. Damage report! The engineer yelled back. Rear stabilizer down. Shields at 20%. Keep them steady, she commanded. But even as she said it, another blast struck the hull, tearing a hole near the lower deck. Vega ran toward the breach with 2 soldiers, sealing it with emergency foam. He shouted through the smoke, Captain, we can't take another hit. Riley's voice came back, calm and sharp. Then we don't get hit. She ran to the control panel. Switching the flight mode to manual override, the pilot turned in shock. Captain, you can't fly this ship. I commanded this class in the war, she said, gripping the handles. Now strap in, we're not dying today. The ship rolled sharply to the left, diving through the stars. Enemy fire streaked past, missing by inches. Riley moved the ship like she was dancing through chaos. Every roll, every dive, perfectly timed. Her hands bled from the vibration, but she didn't stop. The freed humans in the back held on to each other, silent but watching her with awe. Target lock on the lead ship, Vega shouted. Fire everything we've got, Riley ordered. The dropship's cannons blazed, sending a wave of plasma bolts into the dark. One of the alien ships veered away, its engines trailing sparks. The second moved in closer, unleashing a storm of fire. The hits tore through the hull, alarms screaming everywhere. Vega turned to Riley. We're out of ammo. She didn't blink. Then ram them. The words hung in the air for a second, even Vega froze. You're serious? Riley's eyes didn't waver. They want slaves. Let's give them martyrs instead. She pulled the ship upward, engines howling in protest. The alien warship loomed ahead, massive and glowing like a city of glass inside the dropship. Everyone braced as metal screamed and systems flickered. The pilot shouted, We won't survive the impact. Riley replied softly, Maybe not, but they won't either. Just before collision, Vega's radar beeped wildly. Wait. Another signal, human code. Riley's eyes widened. Repeat that. Vega smiled almost in disbelief. It's the carrier. They found us. A massive shadow appeared above them. A human warship uncloaking with a roar. Its cannons lit up the void with fire, blasting the alien ships apart. The first enemy exploded instantly, the second broke in 2. The third tried to flee but was cut down by a storm of missiles. Inside the dropship, cheers erupted, cries of relief filling the air. Riley slumped against the console. Her hands shaking, Vega laughed breathlessly. Looks like you didn't have to ram them after all. She smiled weakly. Still would have been fun. Outside, debris floated like falling stars. Glowing faintly in the darkness, the human carrier moved closer, its massive hull shining with familiar markings. The voice of the admiral came through the comm. Captain Riley, good to see you still alive. Riley straightened her back, her voice steady. Alive and free, Admiral, and we're bringing the others home. In the cargo bay, the rescued humans looked out the windows. Some cried, some smiled, all silent with awe. They had seen death, slavery, and fire, but now they saw hope. The human fleet had returned, and the sky was theirs again. Riley looked through the viewport one last time, at the wreckage drifting among the stars. She whispered softly to herself, That's for every life they sold. Then she turned toward the others, her voice calm and proud. Prepare for docking. The fight's not over, but tonight, we survived. The human dropship glided through the silent void, leaving the burning planet far below. Stars stretched endlessly around them, cold and distant, yet full of quiet hope. Captain Riley stood at the viewport, her hands resting on the railing. She watched the galaxy unfold like a tapestry, every dot of light a world untouched by alien chains. Inside the cargo bay, freed humans sat together, still shaken, but alive. Children clutched blankets. Mothers held their heads high. Some looked out at the stars for the first time in their lives. Every face told a story of pain, survival, and now, freedom. Riley moved quietly among them, checking wounds and calming the frightened. Her presence was calm, steady, a promise in the chaos. Lieutenant Vega approached her, scanning the console. "Fleet has cleared the sector," he said. "No more pursuit?" Riley nodded, her eyes softening. "For now," she whispered. She glanced at the nearest child, a boy with wide eyes and torn clothes. "You'll see your home again," she said gently. "It's out there waiting." The boy nodded, unsure if he believed it, but hope had taken root. Through the viewport, the carrier ship emerged, massive and glowing. Its engines hummed softly, a comforting heartbeat in the silence of space. The human fleet had arrived not just for them, but for the message they carried, that humans could fight, rise, and never bow. Riley's team moved into position, preparing to dock, every movement precise, rehearsed, yet still tense with the memory of fire and destruction. Riley walked back to Vega, who was already watching the fleet. "They'll be safe now," he said, voice low with relief. She smiled faintly. "Safe, but stronger." Vega looked at her, surprised. "Stronger?" "Yes," she replied, eyes shining. "They've seen what humans are capable of. They'll never forget it." He nodded slowly, understanding. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a lesson, a statement to the galaxy that humans could not be owned, could not be broken. In the cargo bay, the rescued humans began to speak quietly among themselves. Stories of lost families, stolen lives, and fear flowed into the air. Riley listened to each story, silent but absorbing. She knew these voices were seeds of the future, each one ready to grow into courage, resilience, and rebellion. Above them, the carrier's docking bay opened, welcoming the dropship inside. The engines roared in harmony, steadying their craft. Riley helped the last of the children onto the ramp. Watching as they ran toward safety, Vega followed, his shoulders tense, finally exhaling as he saw them join the fleet. Riley paused at the entrance, taking one last look at the stars outside. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of unknowns. But for the first time in years, humans had a voice in it, and that voice would echo across the stars, louder than any weapon. Inside the carrier, Captain Riley finally allowed herself to sit. Her hands ached, her body burned from the journey, but her heart was light. She watched the rescued humans gather together, whispering, smiling, and looking at her with quiet admiration. "They thought we were slaves," she whispered softly. "But humans don't break." A faint smile tugged at her lips. For every cage shattered, every chain broken, she had proven it. Vega approached again, a proud expression on his face. "You did it, Captain. All of them are free." Riley shook her head gently. "Not all, but this is the start." She turned her gaze back to the viewport, watching stars streak past as the fleet jumped to faster than light. Somewhere far below, other humans were still in chains, waiting for their chance, and she would come for them. The fire of freedom was not finished. It had only begun. The dropship's engines hummed in the carrier bay, a soft rhythm in the quiet. Riley leaned back, watching the stars blur into streaks of light. Her voice was barely a whisper, yet filled with power. "They thought we were slaves. They were wrong." Behind her, humans laughed quietly. Tears streaked faces filled with wonder and relief. Above them, the galaxy waited, endless and unknown. And Captain Riley knew one thing for certain. The human resistance had begun, and the echo of their freedom would never fade.